Hello, welcome back. We're about to start the second part of our series on arrays. The first part we just kind of gave a brief introduction. In this one we're actually going to be going to creating an array, assigning it some values, and looping through that array. So go ahead and get started. You can follow along by typing out this text on your own, or you are welcome to go ahead and download the files from this in the link in the video description below. So let's go ahead and go through the objectives. We got 8 objectives. The 8th one is really going to be the focus of next lesson and next video. So for this one, first let's create an integer array. It's super simple. You just say int, so that's the type of array we're creating. We're creating an integer array. Use the little brackets indicating that it's going to be an array of integers. We have to give our integer array a name. So we're going to say integer or int, little bracket thingy for array, equal, or rather, my integers. So there's the name of my integer array. So array my integers, and we can actually stop right there. So my integers is a word that we're reserving for an integer array. Now we can go ahead and assign it. My integers equals new int, and we can say it's of length 4. So what goes inside of this little bracket right here is the length of the array. And there you go. We've reserved the word to be an integer array, and now we're saying, hey, I've got my integer array, and it's going to be a new integer array of length 4. So here we actually instantiate the variable to make it an integer array. Okay, so you could also condense this into just one statement, which was what we typically do, but wanted to show it separate because that's going to be important for step 8 later on. Alright, so we've created a new integer array. Now if we run this program, nothing's going to happen. Nothing. Because, well, you didn't tell it to do anything. We could also try to, well, we'll get there in a second. Second step, let's go ahead and assign values to the array. So the way you assign values to an array is you say what integer array you want to use, or what array. So I'm going to say my integers. Integers, okay. My integers, you tell it what index. So the very first item in our array, let's make it equal to, I don't know, 12, doesn't matter. Okay. And then we can go system.out.println my integers 0. And let's make it a little bit more fancy. So let's just say this is the first value in my integers array. So hopefully, if all's done well, it should print out the number 12. Oh, where did I? Oh, forgot my semicolon. Alright, go ahead and run it. Great. The first value of my integer array is 12. Now, you notice we've only assigned one value to the first element in an array that's 4 elements long. So technically what's kind of going on here is we have an array that has, now, as of this step, the array kind of looks like this. It looks like, so you got 12, something, something, something. So you got 4 elements in your array. The first one, 0th index, is 12. Now there's something I probably should have put integer. These are all different integers here, but we haven't assigned values to those integers. What happens if you create an integer array, but you don't actually assign any values to any of those indexes? So by the way we called the first index was say, hey, my integers, 0. That's the first element in the array. First index is going to be equal to 12. What happens if I do the same thing and I say, hey, let's print out the second element? Print, okay, my integers 1. Now notice we have not assigned a value to the second index of the array. So what do you suppose is going to happen when we run it? Let's find out. Oops, probably should call that second. Notice what it said. First value is 12. This should say second value is 0. What? When you create an integer array of length 4, it fills in 4 spaces with zeros. So at the very first step, before we assigned any values to any of those spots or indexes inside the array, it started off really just like this: 0, 0, 0, 0. Just 4 zeros. Until you change the value of one of those elements in the array. All right. So now let's go ahead and create a string array and assign some values to it. So just like an integer array, you go string, use the array symbol, my strings. Let's do something more fun. Let's say zoo animals equals. Now here's something else you can do. You can create a whole array and you can assign values to the array all as one step. So I can say string zoo animals is equal to, what kind of animals are at the zoo? It's been so long. Monkey, tiger, and I don't know, they have bears at the zoo? I think they do. Meerkats. I don't even know how to spell meerkat. Let's leave it as bear. So I can create a string of zoo animals, a string array of zoo animals just by typing out what would go inside the array and using these little curly braces right here. So then I can say system.out.println the first animal in zoo animals in the zoo animals array is zoo animals 0. All right, we can go ahead and print it out. Here you go, the first element. Whoa. I accidentally deleted where I assigned the value to 12. My integers 0 is equal to 12. Okay. The first animal in the zoo animals array is monkey. First value should be 12. Second value is 0 because we didn't assign anything to it. So there you go. We've got all the values of zoo animals. We can kind of loop through those just by saying zoo animals 0, zoo animals 1, zoo animals 2. Okay, so far we create a string variable, our string array. We've assigned values to it. Integer array, we've only assigned one value to it. All the rest are zeros. What happens if we try to assign a value to an index that is not in our array? So right now, our array should be monkey, tiger, bear. What happens if I try to say zoo animals, let's see, that's 0, 1, 2. So the 0, 1 is monkey, the first index, 1 index is tiger, index 2 is bear. What happens if I try to say zoo animals 3 is equal to lemur? I think that's how you spell that. So let's go ahead and run that and see what happens. Oop. Wait, I got an error message. Exception in thread, main, blah. Index 3 out of bounds for link 3 at 15. So notice it's telling us where it happened. Main Java 15 right here. Okay, follow it on over. Oh, I try to assign the 4th index of my zoo animals array to a value. But the problem is my zoo animals array is only 3 long. So let's go ahead and comment this out. And let's say bad. Can't assign a value to something, oh wait, to an index that is larger than the length of the array. Okay, so there you go. Get any value from an array given its index. We've already done that, so we've been doing that all along. My integer 0 gave the first integer. My integers 1 gave the second one. Zoo animal 0 gave the first zoo animal. So that's what that is. Now, how do we find the length of an array? It's actually surprisingly easy. Let's say int zoo animals length is equal to, and here's how you do it. So I'm just creating a variable, the integer variable. You don't have to do that part, but I want to find the length of zoo animals. Let's pretend I didn't know, or I just needed to get that value for some reason. Maybe it was in somebody else's program they wrote and I wasn't quite sure what it was. Could be a variety of situations we could run into where we're not 100% certain what the length of the array is to begin with. So one way you could do that is go zooAnimals dot length. Super simple. You just type in the name of your array and you put dot length and it returns to you the length of zooAnimals. So we can go ahead and do system dot out dot println the length of zooAnimals is plus zooAnimals length. Oops. Go ahead and semicolon that. Let's run it. Let's see what happens. Yay! The length of zooAnimals is 3. So that's how we find the length of an array. All right, how do we loop through an array? There's actually two different ways. I'll show you the first way, and I guess I'll show you the second one. You can use for, you can use while, do while. Typically, you're going to be using a for loop. So for int I equals 0. So we're going to start off at the 0th index of our array. And we're going to say while I is less than. So wait. We're trying to loop through an array, but how do we know what to or where to tell this thing to stop? What happens if it's an array that we don't really know how long it is or we don't remember? What would we do? So int I equals 0, I is less than, let's do zooAnimals. ZooAnimals dot length. So what I can do is I can say, hey, I'm going to start at the 0th index and I'm going to stop before I get to the length of zooAnimals. So remember, zooAnimals is 3 long. So as soon as I is 3, it's going to stop. It's going to do I equals 0, I equals 1, I equals 2. When it hits 3, it stops. It's not going to run. And we're going to say, oops, semicolon, I plus plus. So we're going to increase I by 1 every time it loops through. And what are we going to do? We're going to go system.out.println, and we're going to say zooAnimals I. So we're going to print out the animal for the ith index. So what does that do? When I is 0, it's going to print out zooAnimals 0, which is the first element in our zooAnimals list. Then it's going to come up here and check. Okay, hey, so I equals 0. Is I less than zooAnimals.length? Yes, it is. Okay, great. So then it's going to come over here, print 0. Then it's going to come back up, add 1. Okay, I equals 1. Is 1 less than the length of zooAnimals? Yes, it is. Come down, print out zooAnimals 1, so on and so forth. Let's go ahead and run it. It should print out all the elements in separate lines of all of our zooAnimals. Monkey, tiger, bear. Great. So that's how you can loop through a array. There is another way you might see, just to be aware of. I don't like it as much. You might like it better. So you can say for string, and let me try to go look at this real quick. Okay, so the first type is a string. So first you type out the type, string, and then we're going to do the variable we're going to be looking at. So we can give it whatever name we want. Call it A, it doesn't really matter. You could use I. So for string A, whatever A is, out of the zooAnimals array. So for every string out of the zooAnimals array, what do we want to do? We want to system.out.println, and we want to print A. And it should give us the exact same thing, because what it's going to do is it's going to say for every string inside of zooAnimals, you want to print out that string. Go ahead and run it, and it should say monkey, tiger, bear again. Great. Now you can also reassign variables inside of, that's not really part of this, you could also reassign variables inside of your array just by doing this. So if I go zooAnimals, so monkey, tiger, bear, 0, 1, zooAnimals 1, so that's the second element, so that should be tiger. And if we set it to cat instead, and we go system.out.println zooAnimals 1, it should now print cat instead of tiger. And you'll notice it does right here at the end. So it did monkey, tiger, bear in our loop, and then it printed out cat. So you can reassign the variables or the values inside of your array just by referencing its index and saying equal to whatever you want it to be equal to, so long as it's of the same type as the array. All right. So how do you get the last and second to last element of an array? Maybe you want to find the last element. You don't feel like looping through the entire array to get there. And how do you do that? Well, we know the array, in this case for our zoo animals, is of length 3, but suppose we didn't know that either. We want to find the last element. Well, there's a way to do that. You can actually say, let's just do this, system.out.println, last, oops, last element in the array is zoo animals dot length minus 1. So if you take the length of zoo animals and you subtract 1, so it's 3 long, subtract 1, that's 2, that's going to give you zoo animals 2, which is going to be the last element. And this will always work. You can just say, hey, I take the name of the array, dot length, and you subtract 1, that's going to give you the last element of the array. If you want to find the second to last element, you can do minus 2 instead. And you can do minus 3 for the third to last, etc., etc. All right, go ahead and run this, and you should get bear. All right, that's it for this one. Next video, what we're going to be doing is creating an array of objects, which is going to require a couple different steps and a little bit of different way of thinking about things than what we've been doing so far. I look forward to seeing you next video, and I hope you all have a great time till then.